Hello. It's Vicky here, back with another golden goodie. And today we're going to be going over the difference between cold process soap and melt and pour soap. We're going to go over 5 key categories, which are difficulty, cost, time, customization, and safety. So let's get into it. Okay, before I get too ahead of myself, I want to let you know what the process of melt and pour soap making is and what the process of cold process soap making is. So with melt and pour soap, you have a pre-made soap base that you cut into smaller pieces, put it in a microwave safe container, pop it in the microwave for 30-second bursts. So hit it for 30 seconds, see how much you have melted, then hit it for another 30 seconds and stir. That's pretty much it. You can add your additives after it cools down a little bit and go from there. Cold process soap making is a more traditional way of making soap, and you will call this the method of making soap from scratch. You want to gather your raw materials. You have to have like your oils, your fats, and then your lye, and then it goes through a process of saponification where the molecules combine and create soap. So those are the 2 different methods of making soap that we are talking about today. Now let's go into safety. So melt and pour is fairly safe. All you really have to worry about is how hot the soap will be when it comes out of the microwave. You don't want to burn yourself by like having the soap splash on you or something like that. That's really the only way that you can really get hurt with melt and pour soap. So I would say the safety level is fairly safe. Now, on the other hand, cold process soap, not so much. With cold process soap, you have to use lye, which is sodium hydroxide, which, as most people know, is very dangerous. It can burn your skin, it can burn your eyes, it can burn through your clothes, and yeah, you just don't want it to touch your skin. You don't want it to touch you at all. So with cold process soap, you have to be a lot more cautious. You have to wear your safety gear. You want to wear goggles. You want to have long sleeve shirt. You want to have pants on, closed toe shoes. You don't want to have your toes out and then a little lye water drip on your feet. You got burns. You don't want to do that. So you want to make sure you're protected. So that's safety. Now let's go into difficulty level. With melt and pour soap, it's fairly easy. I feel like it's really beginner friendly. It's a great place to start. It's where I started, where I felt most comfortable. So basically, again, like I said, you chop up the soap, you put the soap in the microwave, you pull it out, and then you decide what colorants you want to add to it, your fragrance that you want to add to it, any embeds or botanicals, you can add that stuff to it. Once it's melted, you pour it into your mold. Once it's poured, you just wait and let it sit. That's it. So difficulty level is pretty easy. For cold process soap, I would say this is more on the intermediate to difficult level because, again, you do have to use the lye, which makes it much more dangerous than doing the melt and pour soap. And also you have to include all of your ingredients. So you're making this from scratch. So you have to take your oils and your butters, and then you have to melt that, combine it with the lye water, then make sure it comes to a trace where everything is combined like it's supposed to, like everything is mixed and blended well. You don't have any separation. You have to really pay attention to your temperatures, your time. Sometimes if you have a floral scent, you might have less time to work than if you have a more mild scent or regular fragrance. So there is a lot more things that you have to pay attention to when you're dealing with cold process soap as opposed to melt and pour soap. Next, we're gonna go over time. And when I say time, this is from the point where you gather your ingredients to the point where you can actually use the soap. So with melt and pour soap, you basically gather your melt and pour soap, gather your additives, cut up the soap, melt it, add the additives. Once you pour the soap into the mold, it probably takes about, let's say 3 to 6 hours to fully solidify, depending on what kind of mold you're using. And then once you cut it, boom, it's ready to go. You can take it straight to the shower, to the sink, and use it right away. The full time for melt and pour soap, from getting the ingredients to being able to use the bar, is about 9 hours. That's fairly quick. You can make a soap in the morning and sell it by the end of the day. So that's not too bad. As far as cold process soap, gathering the ingredients, that doesn't take much time. Making the soap, that's a little more time consuming, because again, you have to melt the butters and oils, then you have to combine it with the lye water. You have to make sure everything combines properly, and then once you pour the soap, it takes about 24 to 48 hours for the cold process soap to even set up to be able to be taken out of the mold and cut. Once you get past that time frame, so let's say 48 hours, you go ahead and unmold the soap and then you cut it. Then you have to go through the curing process, and the curing process takes about 4 to 6 weeks. During this time frame, the saponification process completes, making your soap mild so it's not dangerous, and making it a harder bar of soap because the water has evaporated out of the soap, making it last longer. So in order to get from the point where you gather your ingredients to where you're actually able to use your cold process soap, that is going to take about 6 weeks basically. So on one end you have the melt and pour soap, hey, quick 8 hours, the soap is ready to use. Cold process soap, a good 6 weeks. So if you're selling soap, you have to be prepared. You have to be planning ahead. So that's going to be time. Now let's go to cost. So for the cost breakdown, I'm going to break it down into 2 different scenarios. One where we have a small batch being made, which will be like 1 loaf, and 1 loaf of soap equals 3 pounds of soap, which is like the standard loaf, and then that'll get you 10 bars of soap. So let's start with that scenario, starting with the melt and pour soap. So I'm going to reference prices from the Brambleberry website. I know a lot of people shop there for their supplies, so we're going to go with them. So for a 1 pound brick of the shea butter melt and pour soap, they have it priced at $5.99. So like I mentioned before, we need 3 of those to make 1 soap loaf. So 3 of those will add up to $17.97. And these scenarios that we're going with right now, this is just bare bones soap. No additives, no fragrances, no colorants, none of that, just the soap. So that's going to be $17.97 for a loaf of melt and pour soap. Now let's go to cold process soap. So for cold process, I used a very basic recipe, a recipe of olive oil, palm oil, coconut oil, and of course our lye solution that we have to have. So for the olive oil, we'll need 12 ounces, which will be $8. The palm oil will need 6 ounces, which will be $4. The coconut oil will need 15 ounces, which will be $6. And for the lye solution, we'll need 18 ounces of lye, which will be $8. And that comes to a total of $26. So for a 3 pound soap loaf of the cold process soap, that's $26. And for a 3 pound loaf of the melt and pour soap, that is $17.97. We can round that up to $18. The melt and pour soap is clearly the cheaper choice when going with a small batch. Now let's switch over to a bigger batch. Now we're going to look at a batch of 100 bars of soap, which will be 30 pounds of soap, 10 loaves. So for 100 bars of soap, Brambleberry has a 40 pound brick of the melt and pour base. So that's basically buying in bulk, what you would want to do if you're making large scale batches. So for the 40 pound melt and pour base, that is $200 for that. So for 100 bars of soap, we're gonna only need 30 pounds of the melt and pour base. So if we break down $200 for 40 pounds of soap, that breaks down to $5 per pound. So $5 per pound for 30 pounds would be $150. So to make 100 bars of melt and pour soap, that would be $150. Now for the cold processed soap, the olive oil would be $52. The palm oil would be $32. The coconut oil would be $32, and the lye would be $23. So that will bring us to a total of $139 for 100 bars of the cold processed soap. So comparatively, the melt and pour was $150 for 100 bars of soap. So if you're going to be buying in bulk, using cold processed soap would be the cheaper option when you're making more soap. Okay, so now let's go over to customization, which is my favorite one of all 5 of these because I love to customize my soap. So as far as melt and pour soap, it's kind of limited when it comes to customizing because it really only has 2 textures. You have the really thin soap when you first heat it up and melt it, and then you have the thick soap. As it starts to harden, it thickens. So with this, you can do like a swirl, which I have a YouTube video showing how to swirl melt and pour soap. You have to wait till it starts to get a little bit harder to be able to do that. And you also can do really nice layers. So melt and pour soap is good for layering because it does set up so fast. You can make one layer, wait, let that dry, spray a little alcohol, pour another layer, and they all look really smooth and separated. So that's really good. And if you get real creative, you can do other things with melt and pour soap. You can use embeds. Of course, you can add your botanicals and your colorants to make it look pretty. But as far as like the base, there's no changing the base because it's melt and pour. So you get the base and whatever is in it is in it. So it's not fully customizable. But on the other hand, cold processed soap, now that is fully and truly customizable. You can put any ingredients in it that you want. You can do shea butter, you can do cocoa butter, you can do olive oil, you can do almond oil, whatever you want to do, you can fully customize it. And as far as designs, there are so many different designs you can do. Sometimes it depends on how hot the soap is, what fragrances you use, different things like that. But you can do a drop swirl. You can do all types of pretty swirls. You can also do layers. And if you go online and Google or go on YouTube and check out the different cold process designs, you'll see that there are a lot of them, and there are some really advanced designs that you can do with cold process soap. I hope you got something constructive from this video, and if you did, leave that down in the comments. If you like my video, check out some other videos, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.